the issue of the man they'd left to bleed to death in a cab ride gone horribly wrong. She needed to get the fuck out of Mexico. Her thoughts were interrupted by the sound of the door opening. One of the guards entered the room. He was accompanied by a stout Mexican man wearing a cheap suit and run-over shoes. Luego, the scowling guard mumbled before leaving as suddenly as he had appeared, leaving Stubby behind. Sunny sized up the poorly dressed man standing before her, who would be acting as her attorney. She felt a pang of guilt as she thought about her real attorney, Malcolm, being detained in a room nearby. The man introduced himself as Marcos Gomez. He sat down beside her on the wooden bench and set his briefcase down on the floor in front of him. He smelled of unfamiliar cologne and hand sanitizer, an oddly comforting combination that put Sunny at ease. She felt optimistic. Hopefully, he could find a way for her and Malcolm to get out of this mess. Sunny began talking animatedly to her makeshift attorney, telling him in anxious, hurried Spanish that she hadn't been given a chance to call anyone since her arrest. She thought that surely inmates were allowed one phone call here, as they were in America. Anything else seemed inhumane. Mr. Gomez tried to suppress a smirk at Sunny's audacious outrage. Here she was, under arrest for drug possession in a foreign country, and indignant still. He asked her if she had ever been arrested before. Sunny shrugged, unsure how that was relevant. He read between the lines and assumed that her shrug was a yes. "Para drogas?" he asked. "For drugs?" Sunny hesitated before answering. "Once for marijuana. The other time was for driving with a suspended license." She watched him write that down. "But I was booked, given a phone call and released both times. Nothing like this." She hadn't brushed her teeth nor been given an opportunity to shower since her arrest. She had no access to her luggage, and had sat in the same panties for far longer than she cared to. Sunny had barely been given anything to eat, and she wondered how long she would be forced to endure this nightmare. She felt disgusting. Mr. Gomez listed the charges against her. Drug smuggling, possession of narcotics, and conspiracy. "I wasn't smuggling anything or conspiring with anybody. Those drugs are not mine." Even though she was aware that she was lying, Sunny convinced herself that this was all just a misunderstanding. She hadn't been smuggling on purpose, and the small amount of coke she had in her possession certainly didn't warrant her being held for this long, under these conditions. Gomez nodded, seeming to understand her frustration. Sunny sighed heavily. She dragged her fingers through her hair in exasperation. "Who was I supposedly conspiring with?" she demanded. Her thoughts turned to Malcolm again. Oh no. Did they think that he was her co-conspirator in this imaginary drug smuggling ring? "Are you representing Malcolm too?" she asked. Gomez frowned, confused. "Who is Malcolm?" Sunny looked at him like he was crazy. "My co-defendant," she said. "The guy I was with at the airport." Gomez, still looking bewildered, sifted through some papers in his briefcase. He seemed to find what he was looking for, paused on one page in particular, and slowly read a section of it. He shook his head. Sunny cleared her throat impatiently. "Senor Dean, yes?" he asked. "Yes." Sunny was growing impatient with this man. Gomez shook his head again. His expression was bleak, and she knew instantly that there was bad news. "Malcolm Dean has already been released. He flew back to the U.S. yesterday." Sunny's heartbeat quickened and her stomach turned. She heard a ringing in her ears. "What?" Suddenly she felt sick, bile rising in her throat and sweat pooling at her brow. Gomez scanned the document in his hand once again. "He gave a statement. He said that the drugs belonged to you alone, and he had no idea about any of it. Since the drugs were found in your luggage and not in his, they allowed him to pay a sum and leave Mexico immediately." Sunny felt like she might pass out. "He gave a statement," she repeated incredulously.